Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're jumping right into the storyteller's justice. We're going to break down the actual mechanics of crafting a documentary masterpiece.
Think about this for a second. How do you tell a story that literally changes the world? It's a huge question, right? Because documentary filmmaking isn't just pointing a camera and capturing reality. It's about structuring that reality so it hits your audience right in the gut. As we're going to see today, the most impactful films don't just throw facts at you. They drag you along on this visceral, deeply emotional journey with ordinary people who were forced by circumstance to do absolutely extraordinary things.
Let's dive right into this with the words of Mommy Till Mobley. After the brutal 1955 murder of her 14-year-old son, Emmett Till, she insisted on an open casket. Her reason? She said, "I wanted the world to see what they did to my baby." Just let that sink in. That profound, incredibly raw, personal truth is exactly the kind of fuel you need for powerful storytelling. A real documentary relies on capturing that exact level of human emotion. But the big question is, how on earth do filmmakers take such a powerful, painful, real-life catalyst and structure it into a narrative that people can't look away from?
Well, according to the New York Film Academy, it all comes down to a really specific foundational framework. First up, you have to find a story you are deeply, intensely passionate about. You can't fake it. Next, you do the work. Deep research. You find the experts, you dig into the historical background, building that crucial credibility. After that, you blueprint the sequences. You're basically creating an outline that tracks the natural spine of the story. And finally, you write the script, formatting it into video and audio columns. This makes sure your visuals perfectly sync up with your interviews, narration, and music. This right here, this is your narrative blueprint.
Now, what's really fascinating is seeing how this exact same framework applies to two wildly different eras of justice. On one hand, we have Mamie Till Mobley fighting racial violence and lynching in the 1950s. On the other, we have Lilly Ledbetter, an activist fighting against gender pay discrimination and corporate inequality in the 2000s after she found out Goodyear Tire was paying her way less than the guys. Two totally different timelines, two totally different battles. But at their core, they're both ordinary women thrust into the spotlight, fighting tooth and nail for systemic change. And that shared DNA gives you an incredibly strong foundation for a documentary. And look at what happens when we map these historical realities onto a classic three-act cinematic structure. It's like a giant puzzle falling into place. Act 1 sets up the story and the conflict. For Ledbetter, the tension hits a boiling point in 2007 when the Supreme Court ruled against her, basically saying Title VII didn't allow her to sue for pay discrimination because too much time had passed since her first paycheck. Boom, that's your inciting incident. Act 2 deepens that conflict. Obstacles pile up, but our subject fights back, like in 2008 when she stepped up to the mic at the Democratic National Convention. Finally, Act 3 brings the resolution. For Lilly, the climax is the 2009 passage of the Lilly Ledbetter Fair Pay Act, literally fixing the law she was fighting against. We actually see that exact same three-act structure in Mamie Till Mobley's timeline, too. The devastating catalyst, our Act 1, is August 1955, the murder of Emmett and Mamie's unimaginably brave demand for that open casket funeral. Act 2 brings the deepening conflict as she actively pursues justice. Mamie transforms into this powerful public speaker, going on a massive, highly successful speaking tour around the country for the NAACP. And Act 3, the resolution and legacy. This one spans decades, finally culminating in the Emmett Till Anti-Lynching Act being signed into law in 2022. It's a perfect, tragic, yet triumphant example of pain transforming into enduring purpose. But hey, structuring the timeline is really only half the process. How do filmmakers actually visually frame all this grief and activism? American film scholar Bill Nichols broke documentary films down into distinct modes. And let's start with the observational mode. Think of this as a window on the world. The filmmaker is just observing the truth, letting the camera capture subjects totally uninterrupted. It's raw. It often uses handheld cameras so nothing feels staged. Imagine using this to grab an unedited, chaotic moment at a protest, or a really quiet, devastating moment of reflection. So, as you can see, in this observational mode, the camera stays completely outside the action. It's totally separate from the characters. It creates this sense of unseen, unadulterated reality. The subjects, and by extension us, the audience, kind of forget the camera's even there. Life just unfolds naturally, with zero interference. Now, let's flip the script and look at the participatory mode. In this one, the filmmaker is literally an integral part of the documentary. Instead of hiding in the corner, the director is right there, following people around, asking questions, basically becoming a character in the subject's life for the duration of the film. Think about a director stepping in to directly talk to a trailblazer like Lilly Ledbetter.
They're asking her pointed, tough questions about decades of unequal pay, trying to provoke those emotional, direct responses that really drive the narrative forward. When we put these two approaches side by side, it highlights a really stark, intentional choice every storyteller has to make. The observational camera is a detached fly on the wall, but the participatory camera, it breaks right into the circle of events. It gets its hands dirty. These are highly subjective choices, guys. You have to ask yourself, do we want the audience to feel like they're secretly watching history unfold through a keyhole, or do we want them to feel like they're in a dynamic, ongoing conversation with the subjects? And then there's the performative mode. This style is highly subjective. It uses personal stories and personal journeys to construct these undeniable social truths without getting bogged down in arguing the pure facts of the experience. Lily Ledbetter actually did something super similar in writing with her 2013 memoir, Grace and Grit. She laid out her humble beginnings in Alabama and her fierce personal struggle at Goodyear. Our performative documentary would take that highly subjective, deeply personal journey and use it as the main lens for the audience to understand the massive, broader issue of corporate inequality. Which naturally leads us to the concept of a single point of view. This is where the camera's perspective is funneled entirely through one single character. By strictly anchoring the viewpoint to someone like Mamie Till or Lily Ledbetter, the storyteller forces us to carry their emotional weight. We aren't just taking a history lesson on civil rights or fair pay. We are emotionally living through the devastating lows and the triumphant highs right alongside them. It's incredibly powerful. Okay, so visuals and structure are absolutely vital, but we can't forget about sound. According to Universal Production Music, your musical choices are make or break for how a story is received. When you have raw, emotional interviews, you want minimal ambient tracks, maybe some gentle piano or strings, so you don't overshadow the dialogue. For archival footage from the 50s or 2000s, orchestral or period authentic string quartets can totally transport the viewer back in time. And when you hit those major themes of social justice and activism, that's when you bring in the moody, modern instrumental tracks with evolving intensity to underscore the rising tension and really inspire a call to action. Just imagine it with me for a second. Act 3 arrives. The years of struggle, the brutal courtroom losses, the heavy grief, it's all building up. The music starts to swell into this moody, modern climax. The tempo quickens, the strings rise. The cuts between visuals get faster. You're seeing the gavels fall, the bills getting signed into law, the crowds going wild. The score is perfectly matching that rising tension, proving exactly how audio and visual elements combine to elevate this grand narrative of systemic justice. And that brings us to the ultimate resolution of our documentary, the lasting legacy. The Lily Ledbetter Fair Pay Act of 2009, the Emmett Till Unsolved Civil Rights Crime Act of 2007, the Emmett Till Anti-Lynching Act of 2022, Mamie Till Mobley being posthumously awarded the Congressional Gold Medal. These aren't just footnotes. These are tangible, world-altering impacts made by ordinary individuals who absolutely refuse to stay quiet. The cinematic journey ends not just with a feeling, but with real-world historic change. Which leaves us with one final lingering thought. We've just unpacked the mechanics, the 3-act structure, the different modes of observation and participation, the raw emotional power of a single point of view, and the momentum of a perfectly scored narrative. You literally have the blueprint right here for crafting a documentary masterpiece. So I'm going to leave you with this question. What ordinary story will you tell to change the world? Thanks so much for hanging out with me on this deep dive in today's Explainer. I really hope you're leaving as inspired as I am. Keep learning, keep analyzing, and go tell some great stories.